E for the open in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Roll fade up. Stand by camera 10.
You've now heard 3 debates.
Okay, it was supposed to have changed. It didn't change, so I'm going to put Danielle back
this year,
where
our
she was
Decision
supposed to be.
2012 coverage brought you every twist and turn of the election.
You didn't build that.
Big-time rich corporation.
The private sector is doing fine.
There are 47% who are with him, who are dependent upon government, who believe that they're victims.
He does not have a plan. His idea is to Obamacare and a stimulus, all we need.
Now the nation celebrates election night with a presidential race to be decided.
Virginia, we're going to win on November 6th. I'll tell you that.
Well, let me tell you, Wisconsin, we know what change looks like.
While across the Northwest, candidates for local, state, and federal offices wait for the votes to be counted.
And residents eye ballot issues that could make history.
And we are the citizens of Washington. We will decide for ourselves.
And shape the future for generations to come.
Education reform in Idaho is absolutely necessary.
The radical and unproven ideas, and students come first, were hatched from somewhere behind closed doors.
We cannot go backwards.
You're watching Decision 2012 coverage of election night on NWCN.
Mike, Rob, and Shaniqua, make the move, dissolve.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rob Piercy.
And
I'm
fade
Shaniqua
out your music.
Manning. Tonight we'll bring you
Super is
complete
clear.
coverage
Full
of this
screen
election
comes
across
next.
the Northwest and the nation with results and reaction.
It was just a short while ago that some polls closed in 3 more states impacting the presidential race.
Dissolving full screen. Stand by F with side 2.
Time include Ohio, a state everyone is going to be watching very closely tonight. The next major poll closing is set for the top of the hour with 17 states in play.
And
standing by for more on our national scene are Washington, D.C. insiders Dave Cassidy
full
and
screen
Sue
on
Turner.
3
we'll hear
comes
from Dave
next.
a little later on the impact of tonight's presidential outcome on D.C. And Sue will look ahead to Inauguration Day when we can expect the planning to begin.
And dissolving
as
to
we
3.
Wait for the numbers to come in for races across
Wiping
the
to
Northwest
G.
later on tonight.
That'll have a side
Let's
1.
look at a closer look at the contest
Player
for governor
1.
in Washington State. For
And
the
roll
first
G
time
wipe.
in 8 years, the state of Washington will welcome a new governor. Democrat Christine Gregoire won
Stand
2
by
very
the
close
boxes
elections.
with
in 2004
anchors
by
Ed
just
and Danny.
133 votes, and in 2008 by a wider margin. But she
Then we
decided
go
not
to
to
Ed
run
full.
again this year. And that set the stage for these 2 leaders, known to Washington state voters. They're taking a shot at the state's
Stand by the
top
boxes.
spot.
And
Well, this is a race, of course, that we're going to follow very closely throughout the night tonight.
And WCN's Ed Mears at
Ed's
Republican
in
Rob McKenna's
73.
election headquarters in Bellevue, Washington. Danielle Grant from our news partners Krem 2 in Spokane is at Democrat Jay Inslee's headquarters in downtown Seattle. But let's
Mike,
check
Ed
in
in
first
73.
with Ed and get the pulse down there. Ed?
Yeah, Rob and Shaniqua, I'm
Taking
at the
Ed.
Hyatt in Bellevue, Washington, where McKenna supporters are gathering for obviously what they hope will be a victory party tonight. McKenna is trying to become the first Republican to win the State House in Washington since John D. Spellman did it all the way back in 1981. And fresh in the minds of many people here, of course, as you mentioned, 2004, when Dino Rossi lost a very close race and eventually lost in 2 recounts. Supporters here hope that this will be a historic night as well, but in another sort of manner, if you will. We'll be going to Danielle Grant in downtown Seattle a little bit later on with a reaction from the Inslee camp. But for now, I'm Ed Muir reporting from Bellevue, Washington, NWCN.
And track E.
Good evening, I'm Greg Copeland. We're talking issues that are likely to rewrite the history books. For example, efforts to legalize marijuana in some fashion in Oregon, Washington,
Out of this,
and
we
Colorado.
have the
Then there's
3-shot.
Washington State Referendum 74, which would affirm
we'll
same-sex marriage
Paul
legislation
on
passed
9.
earlier this
It's
year.
first with
It's
a
been put
half
to voters
screen,
32 times
and then we'll
in a
be
variety
centering
of states,
him.
and it has lost every time. Just 6 states and the District of Columbia allow same-sex marriage, and in each of those, it has either been approved by the
Coming out to
legislature
the
or the
3
courts.
of you guys next.
I talked recently with our expert pollster, Stuart Alway, and he said turnout could be the
Back
deciding
to
factor
you
tonight.
is the out.
Support for referendum 74 goes down with age. That is, the older you are, the more likely you are, less likely you are to support it.
Right.
Which
30.
is going to have some be impacted by turnout because younger voters are less likely to turn out.
To the classroom now, where Idaho voters decide on 3 propositions which could overturn the state's controversial education reform package passed last year by the legislature.
10 left.
That package restricts collective bargaining and other rights for teachers.
Stand by.
We'll have much more on that issue as well coming up in
Mike,
just a bit.
Shaniqua, Rob, and Paul.
Back to you.
And
All right,
Tate.
thanks, Greg. We want to welcome in our political analyst, Paul Guppy, now.
Yeah, Paul is going to be with us all night long.
Thank you for
it could
adjusting
be a
the
long
shot.
one for analysis of the issues in
And
the presidential race. Paul is the Vice
Paul with the
President
half
for
screen.
Research at the
Back to a
Washington
3
Policy
shot
Center
next,
and
and we'll
spent 12
center
years
9.
on the staff of the U.S. Congress. Thanks so much for being here
Taking
tonight.
3 shots, center 9.
Let's first start with the presidential race. You've been with us on Race to the Wire for the last few months. Is there
little
anything
bit
that's
tighter.
happened here in the past 24 hours that you think affects this presidential
Trying to
race?
get rid of Rob's
Yeah,
hand.
what's interesting, especially with the interruption last week
That'll
with
work.
Hurricane Sandy,
Take.
really took the attention of the entire country off of this hot presidential race on a massive natural event that happened on the East Coast. Now that focus has come back onto the presidential race just in the last few days, so I think that's affecting the dynamic there.
And the polls are going to be closing in 17 states in just a couple of minutes. This is a big one. Which states do you have your eyes on tonight?
Well, definitely Ohio is everyone, but most importantly is Virginia and Florida to see if those do fall into the Romney camp. He's counting on that in order for him to have momentum to carry him through the evening. So that's the first step.
Virginia, at this point, still too close to call. We'll
Exactly.
be watching it. All right, thank
Send
you,
my
Paul.
full screen on 3 and dissolve.
Tonight, we also look beyond the White
Going
House
to Catherine
a divided
next.
Congress that
Catherine
could have
in the
an
Weather Center.
entirely new look come
Camera 7.
January. Catherine Barrett is standing
Mike,
by
Catherine,
with more on that.
and
Catherine?
taking her.
Thanks, Shaniqua. Rob. Tonight, the balance of power in the House and Senate is in play, and the Northwest will certainly play a big role in that. I'm following nearly a dozen races in Washington state, including the heated contest between Republican
Okay,
John
stand by
Foster
boxes.
and Susan Delbene in the 1st District, as well as
Rob,
several other
Shaniqua, and
congressional races
Catherine.
in Oregon, Idaho, and Montana.
We'll go back to
And
Catherine.
we'll be checking in on the national congressional picture as well as the night goes on. Shaniqua?
And
All right,
Mike
thank
Dunn.
you, Catherine. Of course, everybody's going to be watching the tally as the results come in.
Coming back
How likely
out
are
to
Republicans
Catherine,
take
then
control
video
of the
and G.
Senate, or likewise Democrats with the House?
Well, Shaniqua, Democrats, of course, currently
Taking
have the
Catherine.
edge in the
Stand by
Senate, 53
G.
to 47 seats, but Republicans were hoping to pick up seats in Connecticut, Indiana, and Missouri, among others.
Real G,
but
take.
those last 2 races became a little bit complicated following controversial
We'll do
statements by
boxes.
Republicans Todd Aiken in Missouri
The anchors
and
and
Richard Murdoch
Catherine
in
again.
Indiana. Their 2 races we'll be watching very closely tonight. As for the House, most analysts believe the 25-seat deficit for Democrats will be simply too much to overcome.
And Mike.
To Washington State now in the 1st District. This is actually 2 races. This is kind of interesting. 2 races there for 1 spot, right? Tell us about that.
That's right, Rob. There's a special election to finish out Jay Inslee's
Taking
term.
Catherine.
Inslee, of course, running on the Democratic
And
ticket for
we'll
Washington
have
State governor. And complicating
map,
matters
dissolving
further
map.
in this district, the boundaries for it were completely redrawn. It now
Back
stretches
to the
from Canadian
boxes,
border
and then
to
we'll
rural
go to
areas
the
east of
boxes
I-5.
with
I'll
Frank
have
Sing
much more for you
71.
on that race
Mike
coming up.
Anchors,
All right,
taking.
thanks so much, Catherine. Let's shift gears now over to
And
social media.
there's-
Joining us in our election tech center is former NBC and CNBC correspondent Hanson Hossein.
And Hanson works as director of the graduate program on digital media at the University of Washington. And he's going to be hosting a new show that's debuting this weekend right here on NWCN.
All right, stand by to
It's
bring
called
up
Four
Hanson.
Peaks. Hanson, what are you going to be watching
And
tonight?
bring
Hi,
him
Shaniqua.
up.
Well, I'm watching it right now. A
Taking
lot of
him.
people are calling this the first digital media election, or maybe the first Twitter election. Compared to 2008, there are 10
Taking the web.
times more users on Facebook,
We'll go back.
5 times more users on Twitter than we had in 2008. So a lot of people are expressing themselves right
Okay.
now. In fact, if we look at
Going back to
my
him.
various screens that I have on TweetDeck, where I have my Twitter feed going, people it's by the second. It's incredible
Taking
how many
web.
people are talking about this, and a lot of people are
Two
sort of
shot
saying,
coming out of
I
this.
voted. And there's even an interesting graphic showing how many people are saying this.
Taking.
Obviously, there are absentee ballots from around the world, but here in the United States, that's the big hashtag right now, I voted. On
Okay,
top of that,
thank you.
Twitter is also measuring sentiment. How are people expressing themselves on Twitter towards the 2 candidates? And here we have Barack Obama with a sentiment of 74, which is
Okay.
8 up since yesterday,
Taking
and Mitt
web,
Romney,
and
59.
then back to
Now, we
him.
do know about Twitter that in terms of people
Stand
who
by.
are on Twitter and demographics, it does skew a little bit to the left
Taking
and a
71.
little bit more female. So it's quite possible that we're seeing a bit of that bias in terms of how
Mike,
people
the
are expressing
anchors.
themselves on Twitter.
Mics are hot.
Shaniqua?
Taking
Yeah, I've
boxes.
seen that I voted sticker placed on Facebook. All my
A lot of
friends
people.
have it. We don't get that here in Washington State because, we vote by mail, so we're missing our stickers.
That's true. Although a lot of people are still saying that they did vote in
That's
their
right.
status updates on Facebook because they're very proud of it.
That's right. All right,
And back
thanks
to
so much. We'll see you in a bit,
Stand by
Hanson.
two-shot
We're
and
just
take
a few
stand by
minutes
the
away
map.
now from the polls closing in 17 states. Many
Dissolve.
are crucial to the presidential race, including
We'll
Florida.
have a full screen on 3
once
next.
the polls close, numbers will start trickling in slowly, and of course, we're going to bring you those numbers and updated electoral vote totals for President Obama and Mitt Romney.
We'll also
And
bring
full
you
screen on
results
3.
from across the Northwest. We expect
Camera
numbers to come
10,
in
they'll
for
be saying
Oregon,
goodbye.
Idaho, and Washington after 8 p.m.
We'll take a
and we will
break.
bring you speeches from the key candidates as they happen as
And
well.
But
Okay.
over the next couple of hours, we're going to hear from the candidates. We'll hear from party leaders as well. And we'll examine these races and issues a
bring in
lot
some
closer
music.
with our panel of experts.
A lot to get to tonight. Of course, we're going to have Paul Guppy with us throughout the evening. We're going to be following the social media world and see how things are trending. We've seen early on what's happening right there. It's going to be a fun night. Shaniqua and I are going to be here
Dissolve.
with our colleagues throughout the evening. We hope you stay
Stand
here.
by break.
You're watching Decision 2012 coverage of Election Night on NWCN.
And break.